So here's, how many is that? About a dozen. The kind local folks in the region over the years contributed lots of suggestions of different scenarios we could run that totaled up to 34 different scenarios, of which I'm only representing these major ones. A lot of them had to do with tilling at different times and different timing of fertilizers, and it got to where I was more inundated with information that you had to step back and really look at what the whole data is telling you. So the SEC is soil erosion control. You remember the first few slides? If we just stuck filter strips out there on everybody, or repairing buffers, this is the effect that would get you. A lot of numbers. Those in the back, they're real small. It's in the report. We'll cut to the chase. When we do erosion control, nutrient management and cover crops, which is, I'm going to guess this is there we go. This one right here. The E&D is erosion control, nutrient management, and drainage water management together. Actually, the one with, if you drainage water management by yourself without supporting practices, you make things worse. Because it's really a driver of nitrogen. It's what the practice was originally for. So it causes some things to get worse, and it was the runoff. The surface losses by not being able to regulate that fast enough in a heavy storm on wet soils. But anyway, when we get to cover crop only, you can see it. We got cover crop only, 89 total pounds of nitrogen, total million pounds of nitrogen reduced or lost. Over here, there's a total P, 7.9 million there. When you combine that with good nutrient management, you're at 60 and 5.2. This drop right here is 43%, with 3.4 million acres doing that practice, which is pretty much all 3/4 of the 4.9 million that's out there. That's a pretty high bar to reach to get to 43%. And that again goes back to, we got to look at other ways than our little checklist here of BMPs. All these are somebody's precious BMP out across through here. And without a plan, or with a plan, you might be doing 3 of them. Or you may be doing some other thing. So that's unfortunately, with all these numbers, I just wanted to show we tried a bunch of BMPs. They all give you different levels of information, different amounts of reductions. But what it boils down to, again, is to meet the goal is you got to do a lot of these targeted in the right place in your field. This is at the same information, but on a per acre perspective. Most people can relate to per acre. You know, I can put up 90 million. You think, oh, wow, that's a big dang number. But when you put it on a per acre basis, you can relate to it a little bit better, especially when we got this pound of phosphorus somebody left up here for us. Whoops. Get down there to that one, that total P of 1.1 pounds. Is that what we can get down to? That would be the best loss by treating those acres would be losing just a shade more than this right here per acre per year. That may not meet the goals we have out there. Well, dang it. Out here, the soluble only drops down to 1. So it's tough to get there doing it with these methods as a blanket approach, or just running a scenario and we're going to do all this to these acres and all this to that acres. That tells us information about combining practices and how effective they are, but it doesn't tell us how to implement an initiative. The initiative is implemented through a plan. And because we can't get probably where we want to get treating all of them, is we need to think of other solutions. And Steve gave me a bunch of these practice slides, and we need to think about where do we strategically place these things, and what other practices are out there that we can use that are more landscape scale, to where you've got one practice treating multiple fields versus having a lot of practice on one field. There's only so far it's going to get us there with that. These are going to have to be supporting practices, and that's why I threw that in there, just to reinforce the idea that it's not going to come from just changing rate, form, time, method, and sticking some edge of field practices out there. You're going to have to do some extra to get to that goal that you're looking for. What do we have here? Okay. Again, blanket scenarios. It sounds like they all work real well. A BMP applied blanketly everywhere. Well, it doesn't really work that way. If you look here, what we looked at is take a select group of these scenarios, and we looked at how many of them had no change, how many of them actually caused the problem to get worse, and how much did we get a benefit from. Now, don't put an amount level to that. That's the percent of acres that statistically increased. And the way we did our statistics is to detect a very small increase. So although that says 53% with drainage water management, it really only increased by maybe a half pound or so. So it didn't increase a lot, but it actually went the opposite direction of where you wanted to go when you used it by itself. When you used it with good erosion control on the surface and nutrient management, only very few of them continued with that small problem. So that's the thing you have to think about, and that's where the conservation planning comes into play. Cover crops look real enticing, especially used with erosion control and nutrient management. Wow, there's not much wrong with that scenario, except when it comes to yield. You'll see that the way we modeled this, there's another wrinkle in the modeling versus the real world. We show that 45% have a risk of corn yield decline, and that's about an average of about 2 to 3 bushel decline. Doesn't sound like a lot unless you've got several acres and you're trying to feed your family. That may be the difference in making it or breaking it right there. But what we did not do is when we run our scenarios for 50 years, we don't soil test in those 50 years. So most of those yield declines from specifically the use of cover crops would be remedied by a routine soil test that would bring your fertilizer up to a responsible level. Because once that cover crop finishes its job of drawing down the excess P, it doesn't know it's supposed to stop and do other things. It's still going to demand some P. And so you've got to manage the nutrition requirements of your cover crop once you've got a stabilized and gold phosphorus amount to continue reaping those benefits from the cover crops that you want, which is improving your water holding capacity, reducing the wintertime losses, all the other stuff, improving soil health, all the other stuff that the cover crop is going to do for you. Just when its P challenge is through, we don't want to throw them away. But we want to recognize there's an issue there that we need to make sure we take care of in order not to affect our production system. So cover crops in general, if you manage your nutrient management, in fact, most of these scenarios wind up over here or maintaining yield. You have very few when you do good soil testing and maintain a good quality nutrient balance there. Not overdoing it, but keeping tabs. So it's a higher level of management is where when you use cover crops, your management skills have to up its game. Your frequency of soil testing may need to go up so you don't have a bad year because the previous system drew you down a little bit on P. Back to our old friend, going back to precision ag, and almost done, so thank you for bearing with me. This same little map, we got the yields here. Look at this little corner right here. It's only putting out 109 bushels of corn. My apologies to the soybean folks. I had to pick one or the other. The numbers are spread a little better on corn than soybeans, so it looks nicer. Only 15 pounds of the P was in there, what they hauled away. So let's say you were say you were managing your nutrients for this soil type, this dark green here. You put 30 on, you had 15 more than you needed. So that's money out the door. Is your time, money, effort, seed cost, and all the other input costs worth 109 when the rest of your field is like that? So do I still actually need to have this nice square field? Can I do something else different there? Those are the type questions that you only find out with a conservation plan that uses these precision techniques to locate those unique spots that you make those hard decisions on. If I do want to keep farming it, what do I got to do to either make it worthwhile economically and environmentally? So that's kind of the message on this one. This is just an idea of what, to take that even further and to keep pounding it. This can be a yield map, it could be a soil P test map, whatever it is, but Every farm field needs to have one of these. I mean, if there's some reason we could, stepping away into some policy that I'm not supposed to do, but we could set a goal as an agency for X number of farmers in our nation to farm using these, have their decision making based off this. So, are you grabbing your heart? I'm sorry. They can do it on their own. Anyway, and then this will tell you where to go soil test. If you're worried about a gridded soil test where I'm out here on every X number of steps, if you want to make that a little cheaper, now you got an idea where I want to pull my soil samples from, and then now I have a better idea of where I may need to do my variable rate fertilizer. So this and soil testing are the two key pieces of information that every farm field is going to need to move forward. And this is not only for Western Lake Erie, but Congresswoman Capter this morning really identified it. This area really has an opportunity in doing this type of technology to set the example for the rest of the nation, because the data that we see for the nation is no different. Most of the acres are fairly well managed. It's those few that aren't well managed, and those few aren't isolated fields. Those few are scattered everywhere, and this is the only way forward. I like to really think about back when no-till was really getting started. There weren't many people doing it, and then now it's commonplace. In fact, conventional is not common. Conservation tillage is conventional now. So with that type of movement, can this variable rate technology and precision ag follow that same pathway? I know as an agency, we don't really pay a whole lot for that because it's a win-win. And this right here is also a win-win because you're saving your bottom line right here, plus reducing your environmental impacts. So it's just getting it kick-started. It was hard to get no-till kick-started. It's not as hard now. A lot of people want to try to abandon it periodically for whatever reasons. There are some advantages to periodic tillage, but it needs to be well thought out. But that type of a movement, I think, not only in the basin but nationwide, is going to be the key to a lot of our water quality problems. So get down to the last conclusions, and I've probably said all these several times, so I'm going to beat you with them one more time. There's no single solution out there that's going to fit every farm field, every soil in that field, and every farm. They're all different. I think 85% of the acres in the Western Lake Erie Basin grow corn and soybeans, or either separately or together, but they still have a diversity in how they operate. We don't have any two of the 1,019 surveys. There's no two exactly alike. So there's different ways all out there. The best BMP is a conservation plan that you're using. Not a conservation plan that you have stuck in a drawer and we've got a digital copy at the office, but one that's actively being used. And that plan is looking at using yield monitors, more precise soil testing, variable rate technologies, supported with our other conservation practices to do the trapping and the things that are going to happen when Mother Nature decides she's going to dump 2.5 inches on you 2 days after you put your fertilizer out. So those things are going to happen. And so even though you're doing everything you can, you need that little bit of insurance on the environmental side. And that's it. Thank you.